Hey, what's going on, guys? I am just recording all these videos in advance because, like I said, I have been very busy at work. So I am going to teach you how to build a control deck. I've got a couple people on my Discord that asked about it. If you're not in the Discord, by the way, you should totally join it. It's a lot of fun. New subscriber, thank you, Jenin. I appreciate you while I'm filming this video. That's cool. So just deck building in general, but for I'm going to teach you how to deck build in general, but more so specifically, or even more specifically, a control deck, right? So I want to build Crocodile. I think Crocodile is one of my favorite decks in the entire game. That and Blurple Crocodile. So starting out building a deck, you always want to have at least 10 to 12 2K counters. All right, so that's just the kind of the standard, right? A lot of the times we were playing extra 2Ks because Whitebeard. However, this video is coming out after the ban list just happened, so we might want to scale back on the 2Ks later, but for right now, 10 to 12 is normally the best. At the very worst, you need to play 8, all right? But I like to go 10 to 12, most of the time 12. So that's what I usually do first, is when I build a deck is like, okay, I need to have a certain amount of things. I need to have my 2K counters, and I need to have my mandatory cards. After that, let's see how much space we have for other things, right? So for 2K counters, you want to play cards that are just obviously the best 2K counters to play, because those are going to sometimes come in handy as some things that you might play, actually. So a lot of people prefer this card called Alvida, which what Alvida does, let me move my camera real quick, by the way. So what Alvida does is when attacking with a Dawn Honor, you can trash card from your hand and return a character from with the cost of 3 or less to your hand. I personally do not like this as a 2K counter, and I would just prefer to play the card Mihawk. Because Mihawk a lot of the times can just help you cycle through your hand, especially if you have a lot of dead cards in hand. And I think he's just better, all right? But it's either between Mihawk right now in set 4.5 or Alvida, but I prefer Mihawk especially because he has a winter card, all right? And then the next two are kind of like negotiables for blue. It's Sasaki. Sasaki is a mulligan, essentially. 2K counter that can come in handy very often if you have a bad start. Like if you mulligan and still have a bad hand, Sasaki can really help you at least try a third time to get a better hand. And then the next one is Kaya. Kaya is similar to Mihawk, but except for instead of on attack, it's when she's played, and also you can bounce Kaya back to your hand with your Kaido effect, right? Which Kaido is going to be coming up later on. All right, so those are your 12 2Ks, okay? And we're going to be building this deck, by the way, to play against the new meta, right? So like decks like the new red-purple cards coming out in the captain's deck. And then we're going to be playing it against Katakuri, right? So next we're going to talk about our staple cards, right? Staples are cards you have to play in the deck, all right? So for control decks, you have to figure out what is the card, or like what is the deck that you are trying to counter the most, all right? Like what are like your top 3 decks that you're going to be seeing a lot, and like try to tune your deck to make it have a better matchup into those decks. Everything else you're either not going to see as much, or you already have a good matchup into it, right? So for example, Mihawk, you have to play 4 of these. It's just like one of the best cards in your deck. That's a staple, all right? And then another staple is a card like Soga King, right? You want to play at least 2 of him. We'll come back to that, all right? Another staple in your deck is Kaido. Kaido, you want to play at least 2 of him as well. I like Kaido a lot, all right? And then another card that you want to play at 4 is going to be Miss All Sunday right here, where I accidentally put the Gecko in. Miss All Sunday. Miss All Sunday can get back blockers from events from your trash, and helps you recycle cards that can actually deal with your opponent's board. For example, 3,000 Worlds is another staple. I was playing 3, but now since I'm not going to be playing Dragon Twister anymore, I'm going to be playing 4. And then of course, Red Rock, all right? So it's also good just to see if there's any other events you're kind of interested in. You can just type an event at the top right here in the search bar, and see if there's anything else you want to play based on the meta. But for right now, we'll come back to it because we want to see how much extra space we have. Now, personally, I really like the Sentomaru engine, right? The Sentomaru engine is, to me, my favorite thing. So you're going to be playing Sentomaru, and of course, Sentomaru plays Pacifistas, and I like to play At least 3, and now I'm playing 2 of these. So now we have, it looks like 9 spots left over, right? So we have 42 out of 51, so we have 9 spots at the bare minimum. I like playing Zeph because Zeph, what he does is he's not only a yellow counter because he can bounce back Parasparrow, he can bounce back Brule and Sanji and all these other things, right? The 2K counter Sanji. But what Zeph, he can also bounce back Nami in Doflamingo. It can bounce back opposing Senomarus to make them spend extra Dawn. It can bounce back even your own Kaya too, right? So like there's so many different things that Zeph can do that makes him viable. So we'll put him at 3 for now, and if we have space, we might want to add an extra one. That's kind of what I do. I kind of put like the minimum that I want to play, and if I have the extra room, if it seems like he's better than like adding another card, then I would just add that, right? So we want to play at least 3 Zephs and probably 3 Soga Kings as well, because Soga King is still good into yellow. It's good against like Randolph, Parasparrow, all of their triggers that they play, Sanjis and whatnot. It's also good into decks like it's also really good into decks like what is it called? God, I cannot use my brain today. But decks like pretty much Magellan, right? So like Magellan, they can obviously play Magellan again, but like that's their whole turn to make you Dawn -1, and they also have to Dawn -1. So it's just kind of like a waste. This bounces back anything that is 6 cost or less, basically. But there is an option to, instead of Soga King, even though he does cycle, we could have the option of playing Doflamingo instead. Now this actually might come up later on, because one of our matchups that you're going to be seeing a lot of is going to be Film Dofi, right? The new purple green Doflamingo. So if there are a lot of him in the meta and there's way less decks that like play a 6 cost and they're more 7 costs, then actually Doflamingo is better than this Soga King, because he can hit a 7 instead of a 6. All right, the difference is he doesn't get to cycle, and he doesn't have a 1k counter, and he has 1k more attack. But this could come in handy, and that is definitely an option. Okay, so for now, Soga King is good because of the cycle. However, we should definitely come back to that later on. All right, but now we have to play cards that have to essentially help us against the most prominent matchup in the game, which is going to be Katakuri, right? So Katakuri is going to be the most troubling deck in the entire game for this brief amount of time until OPO5 hits. So we need blockers. Katakuri loses to blockers, right? Control decks, you're supposed to basically just counter and stop the other deck from doing what they're trying to do best, right? Katakuri is just trying to pressure your life super hard and then kill you. Now we can't do that if we play a ton of blockers, but we have to play blockers that have synergy with the cards we're already playing. Also, we have to play blockers that don't lose to other decks or other decks in the meta. For example, we can't play this Law right here, even though he is a standard 1-cost blocker, because they have a Struzen to kill Law, and then they have a Monde to rest Law. So that's basically not even really a reliable blocker, okay? We have to play something with a cost of 3 or higher. We're already playing Missile Sunday, so we have space for more. Now, because the 2 we're going to be looking at the most is Doflamingo right here, and then Kuma, right? We're going to be looking at them the most because Kuma can play a Pacifista in our hand, which a lot of times we do end up drawing it, and then Doflamingo is a nice turn to play, all right? And he's also a 1k counter, both these are. Other than that, we don't have a lot of different options right now. We have this Boa Hancock, which I do like a lot. However, yellow trashes life, and Boa Hancock could be in life, you know? So like that, you know, it's probably not as reliable as something that like has an on play or KO effect, as well as is a blocker with like utility. So in this case, we're going to be looking at playing 2 Kumas. That way we can play the Pacifistas from our hand. And then we're going to be looking at playing, it looks like 3 Doflamingo is all we have space for. All right, so once you're done with your deck building, right? Like once you have, let me just save it real quick. So like once you have 51 cards, you kind of look at it and see, okay, is there something that, now that I know how many cards I can fit in here, is there something that I need to play more of based on the meta that we're in, right? And you always want to look at, so for example, in most decks, like they have like tags are important. So if you see at the bottom right here where it says 7 Warlords of the Sea, with his Mihawk. Sometimes they're searchable, sometimes they're not. In this deck, you don't have to worry about it, but in other decks, you might have to. Like, for example, Doflamingo, right? The new film one, green and purple, Doflamingo. So be sure to look at that too, okay? But this one is specifically for Crocodile, as a control deck, right? So, for example, if we look at our deck right now, okay? Our Sogeking, like, what are Sogekings there for? Sogeking is there for what are the best decks in the meta? Yellow, Doflamingo, I think, and then Croc. I think those are the 3 best decks in the meta right now, from what I can tell. I mean, this is super early. I mean, this is literally the same day of the ban list, so I don't know for sure. But Sogeking actually isn't that good into Film Dofi, and it's okay into Croc. So I would actually consider dropping a 1 Sogeking, and then, like, maybe, I don't know, maybe 2 2Ks, because now, okay, so because we dropped a Sogeking, or because we're playing Doflamingo now, and we're able to more consistently see the next couple cards of our deck, instead of drawing them, we can rearrange them with Doflamingo to get a better idea. We don't need to play as many 2Ks, because the 2Ks aren't as important as they were with Whitebeard. And most of the time with against Katakuri, we're going to be blocking anyway. So in this case, we can actually play 10 2Ks. That way we can fit more cards in there that we want to fit in. For example, we can play, what is it called? 1 more Doflamingo, the blocker Doflamingo. All right, so now against one of the best decks of the game that loses to blockers, we're playing 4, 6, 8, 12. We're playing 12 blockers, okay? But we also need to play Doflamingo, the starter deck one, because we need to be able to play it into the blue mirror in case they're playing like the Impel Down version, or like or if they play their own Sogeking, then we can bounce their Sogeking for free, basically, because this hits a 7, this hits a 6, and then this card kind of sticks on the field unless they have Mihawk. All right, and then Mihawk targets this. However, that's totally fine, because there are more important cards than this. Like, he already did his job. Okay, so now we have 2 of each of these in here. So, like, not only are we bouncing more things, but we're more covered into more matchups. And we are playing less 2K counters, but we're making that exception. We're making that sacrifice because we're playing more blockers, all right? And we're also being able to see further into our deck with Doflamingo. So we don't have to play that many blockers, all right? I still like Zeph at 3 because Zeph, like I said, can bounce not only our Doflamingo to get another a stack to see the next top 5. It can bounce Kaya. It can bounce our Sasaki back to hand. It can bounce any 3 costs or lower, right? We're never going to bounce our Senamaru more than likely, but any 3 costs or lower, we're going to be able to do, all right? Which is just really, really, really good. Overall, I like this a lot. I'm going to save this right here. I like this a lot. It is very fitting into basically every important matchup that we're going to need to be able to play against. And I think going forward, this might be my new list, actually. So I'll keep testing this. Of course, after you're done deck building, you have to test it a lot against multiple decks and across multiple games against good players, more than likely. But then obviously take out what needs to be taken out, obviously, if it's like clogging or whatnot, and then that's kind of how you continue the deck building process until you can perfect it. But hopefully you guys learned a lot from this video, and please hit the subscribe button if you like the video, and the like button if you like the video as well. This helps boost the algorithm so other people can watch it too. It also helps the channel out a lot too. So guys, I really appreciate you, and I'll see you on my next video.